After having his property taken over, a Seattle area landlord begs the county to make it easier to evict squatters. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News.
Ryan Hagan provided this footage showing the piles of garbage and syringes in his rental home. On the day, he estimates at least 10 people were evicted. It's the crime scene where a man was shot dead and another person injured just days earlier.
That the city was coming after us for violations of property being damaged or property being dirty.
Hagan said his tenant had constant complaints from neighbors about reported drug use and violent crime.
All right, so I have an interesting story for you today, and once again, it's going over the whole problem with squatters and how in some places you have to go through the civil eviction process in order to remove them. Obviously, that is not good, especially in places like on the West Coast where there's just a ton of tenant rights and the whole eviction process takes forever. And so in this story I'm covering today, there's a Seattle area landlord and he just is getting completely screwed over by the county. The county is fining him for all of the problems that these squatters are causing at his property, and there's nothing he can do about it. He can't get into the property to fix anything, and even if he did go into property and fix stuff, right, the people would just tear it up again. These are, sounds like drug addicts who have decided to squat inside this guy's property and refuse to leave. So he's got to go through the civil eviction process, and that can take a long time. It's absolutely ridiculous. I wouldn't be surprised if they wouldn't try to give free lawyers to the squatters, because isn't that what they do now? They're like, oh, you know what, we have to give lawyers to the tenants because it's unfair. Well, these are squatters. These aren't tenants. So they should be able to be removed by the police, in my opinion. And in some places, that is exactly what's going to happen. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below, and let me know what you think. Do you think that squatters should be able to be removed by the police as trespassers or as people who, broke into a house, breaking and entering, criminals essentially? Or do you believe that squatters should be able to go through the civil eviction process that can take months and cost landlords thousands of dollars and, attorney fees, etc.? I'm pretty sure most of the people on here are going to agree with me and say, hey, this is a criminal issue and we should be able to get these people out of the house as soon as possible. But you never know. Maybe you think that for some reason squatters should have some rights. I do have tenants read my articles and comment on how they think I'm wrong. So maybe you think I'm wrong, but put it down in the comment section. So let's get into this article and see what it says. This article is coming from comonews.com, and it says, homeowner of long-time problem property urges King County to reevaluate the eviction process. Yeah, this is an interesting story, so let's get on with it. A man says the King County Sheriff's Department failed to act before a squatter home became the site of deadly violence and is urging the department to expedite the eviction process for certain properties. The home off 4th Street and Wells Avenue in Renton is where a man in his 30s was killed and another person was shot and injured last summer. Ryan Hagan provided footage to Como News showing the piles of garbage, syringes, and overall poor living conditions in his rental home on the day he estimates at least 10 people were evicted. It's the crime scene where a man was shot dead and another person was injured just days earlier. So yeah, this guy, while he was sitting there trying to get these squatters out of the property, which, he had to go through the civil eviction process, well, guess what? These people were using drugs or, there was criminal activity going on and someone lost their life. That is unfortunate. And if these people had been evicted from the property, or not evicted, but removed from the property because they were there illegally, guess what? That wouldn't have happened there, at least, okay? So there wouldn't have been a dead body laying around this property. The city was coming after us for violations and property being damaged and the property being dirty, Hagan said. Frustrations getting to this point are the lack of response, the lack of service, the ability to get people out of the home in a timely manner, the disrespect to the community. Hagan said his tenant had constant complaints from neighbors about reported drug use and violent crime. He said he first attempted the eviction process in March of 2021, but it didn't happen until nearly 18 months later in August of 2022, in part because of coronavirus restrictions and after the deadly shooting. So yeah, it basically took somebody losing their life before the county finally said, hey, I guess maybe we should go ahead with this eviction. What a ridiculous joke, okay? Now, when they had all those ridiculous eviction protections out there for the pandemic, this is the kind of tenant they were protecting. They were protecting tenants who were sitting in there, not paying rent, tearing the place completely apart, using drugs, committing criminal acts, and they wanted to keep these people in the home. They probably wanted to send them a rent check on top of that. My goodness, you can see the failings of all these programs when you read these stories. It's an awful thing, but I like to get the message out there. I want people to know this is the end result when you have government interference in private business. You have these horrible situations happening. I think that's what sparked the eviction, the news getting out there, and then the outcry from the community, Hagan said. It took way too long, and it could have absolutely been avoided. The sheriff's office, in an email statement to Como News, said its civil unit did experience a backlog once the eviction moratorium was lifted around August. They describe it as a rush combined with being short-staffed. They have since made a dent in the backlog, now with 4 detectives running eviction cases for the county. KCSO's civil unit received an average of 116 eviction cases per month in 2022, with a surge in August of 170 orders according to county data. The number of cases dropped off toward the end of the year. So far in 2023, the unit has received an average of 81 eviction cases. So yeah, they had a backlog, and unfortunately, the whole, this guy got caught up in the whole nonsense of the eviction protections. It doesn't sound like he got any of the rental assistance from the rental assistance program. So he was just paying the bills for this squatter tenant, just paying the bills for him while the tenant tore his property apart. Meanwhile, the city, the county are sending him fines for keeping the property in bad shape, for the place basically being ripped apart by the tenant. You wish you could sue this sort of tenant. You wish you could sue them, get back all of the money that you spent, that you lost due to them, right? But these tenants don't have any money. They're probably drug addicts. It sounds like it. If they found a whole bunch of syringes inside the place, they're probably addicted to drugs. And even if they're not addicted to drugs, these are very low income people and they don't have any money. So suing them is pointless. So yeah, this landlord is just going to take a loss, and it's unfortunate. I've seen this way too many times. I've personally taken losses on my own properties from tenants who I had to evict. So this isn't uncommon. It isn't uncommon at all, but like I said, it's unfortunate, especially when we're dealing with small mom and pop landlords who don't have the huge cash reserves of the bigger players. But even the bigger players, they can really, really take a huge hit financially when they have this sort of thing happen to them. You don't think that, these companies that own thousands of units, you don't think that, they can fall, but you know what? It happens. It happens. Sometimes the losses are too great, especially when we're talking about there were so many people not paying rent, yet they still had to do all of their maintenance, they had to do all of their capital expenditures just like normal. They had to pay their insurance, they had to pay their taxes, they had to pay their loan payments. And so they had all of these bills, and hopefully they had enough people who were paying to be able to cover most of that cost. But they still probably were pulling money out of their reserves in order to make ends meet. So yeah, I don't like reading these stories, but this is important. This is important. They need to improve the process, Hagan argued. I think that 4 is probably not enough, as well as they need to prioritize. They need to know which are a hazard to the community, which are nuisance, to put those at the top, so that there's not a murder. In response, a sheriff's office official said they did not get the eviction paperwork from the courts until July of 2022, then worked quickly to give notice to the people living in the home to move out. They reported having problems trying to communicate with the property owner about scheduling an eviction date, which happened August 5th. The process is unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable, Hagen said. Hagen is now working to get permits to demolish, then rebuild the home where the trespassers have returned since the September eviction. So yeah, these people came back. Of course they did. They came back. They're squatters. They got kicked out by the police, by the sheriff, and they still decided to come back anyway. So now this guy's just like, you know what? I'm just going to tear this whole place down. So, when you wonder, where did all of our affordable housing go? Where did all of our affordable housing go? Well, you know what? You treat landlords like garbage. They ended up tearing down the old housing and then building new housing that they're going to charge full high levels of rent for. And so the affordable housing is destroyed. You allowed it to happen. Your rules, your regulations created this situation. So landlords are going to do whatever is in our own best interest because we have to invest our own personal funds into this. We're not in this for charity or to make people feel good. We're in this to make money. Okay? As soon as people understand and accept that fact, things can get better. Since September, Renton Police Department records show officers have responded to 3 calls for service at the home, including an assist for a fire in October that Hagen said deemed the house a total loss. In January and February of 2023, there were calls for an unwanted subject and abandoned vehicles, the records state. It's a burden to my family, the stress, the financial burden. It's almost something you can't recover from, Hagen said. Hagen wants a quicker police response and the sheriff's office to prioritize evictions based on which properties are a threat to the community. That would be a good idea, okay? I agree that the ones where this sort of criminal activity are going on should be the first ones that are handled by the police. They should be expedited eviction process through the eviction courts. Actually, I don't even think they should go to the eviction court. But if you're in a place where they require you to use the civil eviction process to remove these people, then it should be expedited, okay? And if it's not expedited, these sort of things are going to happen. You notice these tenants returned and then they burned the place down. Total loss. That's what this guy just said. He completely lost his property due to squatters moving back in there and destroying the place. So yeah, I feel for this landlord. I do. My suggestion is once you rebuild the place, just sell it. Get rid of it. Honestly, is it worth investing in a place where it's going to take you this long just to be able to remove squatters? There's so many good places to invest where they treat landlords with respect. That's what I'm all about now. I'm all about going where I'm treated the best, like Andrew Henderson from the Nomad Capitalist says, okay? Go where you're treated the best. And I don't think that King County, Washington is one of those places.